This is considered Muslim progression in the year 2019. According to this article, Sports Illustrated is making history with its 2019 swimsuit cover, featuring a Somali-American supermodel in a burkini. She was born in a refugee camp in Kenya. She is not only the first model to wear a burkini, but also the first hijab-wearing model. This is in fact so historic that she and the crew were overcome with emotion during the photo shoot which took place in Kenya. There were apparently moments where everyone was breaking down crying because it's such a huge moment. And quote, "Oh my gosh, like just thinking about it, it's just so monumental." MJ Day, editor of the Sports Illustrated swimsuit issue, told GMA that the upcoming issue is, quote, "one of the biggest and broadest samplings of beauty that we've ever featured." And Aiden, the model, said, "Now girls are going to be able to see they don't have to change themselves. They don't have to conform to fit in." Actually, there is something very wrong with that quote. The one thing that supermodel Aiden does not understand, among many other Muslims, is that coming to the West, outside of the bubble of Islam, means really freeing yourself. Because Islam is based on the Quran, and the Quran is not just religion, it is a way of life in every aspect. Because the Quran is so long and dense, Sharia law is the condensed version. So the question now is, why is it in countries that have started progress 100 years ago and have reached their peak now in 2019, are Muslims now starting to make a dent in progress? There is something very wrong and unusual when people start crying over the slightest progression of an Islam-based nation or person. In order to understand something about this situation, we're going to go back to a point in history that explains something very important. In fact, we're going to go so far back to biblical times. You're probably thinking, oh no, she's bringing up one of those verses from the Bible. Yes, I am. And before you start fuming and getting outraged and throwing things all around your room just because I'm showing you a Bible verse, chill out and listen. The estimated date of the writing of Genesis was about the 1400s BC. In this verse, Hagar got sent away by Sarah, her mistress, and an angel gave her this prophecy. Yes, prophecy. "Return to your mistress and act as you should, for I will make you into a great nation." That nation today is the Middle East. This son of yours will be a wild one, free and untamed as a wild ass. That's pretty fitting, actually. He will be against everyone, and everyone will feel the same towards him, but he will live near the rest of his kin. Just like Abraham is the father of the nation of Israel, Ishmael is founder and father of the Middle East. And Muslims only believe that Ishmael is the true son of Abraham, not Isaac. Today's Middle East is still in ruins. They are against everyone and everyone is against them. So why am I bringing this up? Well, fast forward to modern times, beginning in the 1700s and moving to today. The founding fathers were against Sharia law. They did not care for Sharia law. Sharia law does not work. And how do I know this? Where's my proof? Right here, the Constitution, unlike anything that has ever been made in history. The Constitution and this nation was founded and built on Christianity, which means it opposed any other form of doctrine. After reading through this article myself, at the bottom here it says, "Notice that Franklin openly acknowledged that their frequent prayers throughout the Revolution had been answered. Hence, America became an independent nation rather than remain a subjugated British colony. This is just one example of how answered prayer changed the course of the nation." But to return to the Constitutional Convention, Washington recorded that they went to church to hear an address. At the church, the Reverend William Rogers had a special prayer for the Constitutional Convention. And at the bottom, I highlighted one important part, that the United States of America may furnish the world with one example of a free and permanent government. And because of the ambition of America, it caused drastic changes throughout the world. This is a well-known picture of Washington praying. It's part of American history. Ronald Reagan said, "One of the most inspiring portrayals of American history is that of George Washington on his knees in the snow at Valley Forge. That moving image personifies and testifies to our founders' dependence upon divine providence during the darkest hours of our revolutionary struggle." And I want to emphasize something. The reason that the United States of America has thrived and and come to such heights as never before and no other nation in history is because this was a nation on its knees. This was a nation that was founded on God, not Sharia law. In fact, Muslims are coming to the West, the place of infidels, the place they hate most, because here we have risen as a nation. America is a testament to other nations of what happens when you build your trust on God. Break that and the foundations will crumble. This is what we were, and this is what the Quran and Sharia law is trying to stomp out. All the success and hard work of our ancestors and people before us down the drain. Instead, now we are being taken advantage of, and the bleeding hearts of this country decided that we needed to tolerate Sharia law. We need to tolerate Islam, a religion and way of life that has never worked, which is what led to mass migration in the past years of Muslims to other countries. Our ancestors would not be proud of the progress we made. They would be ashamed of us. So what started this? Muhammad. So I looked to make sure that the origins of Muhammad in the Quran are true, and they're pretty consistent. According to Islamic text and tradition, an angel named Gabriel visited Muhammad in 610 AD. Notice the date. This is after Jesus, after Abraham, after all the amazing and terrible events that have already passed. Well, Gabriel showed up while Muhammad was meditating in a cave. The angel ordered Muhammad to recite the words of Allah. And right here is the problem. No one was around to testify or witness to this. Muhammad claimed that he was visited by the angel Gabriel, and everyone just believed him. In stark contrast to Jesus. This article says there's more evidence Jesus existed than Julius Caesar. Anyone doubt Caesar existed? Professor Daryl Bach says that any piece of surviving ancient work is called a manuscript, and more ancient pages or fragments of the Bible have survived by far than any other book from antiquity. It's exceptional. You're talking about over 5,800 Greek manuscripts and over 8,000 Latin manuscripts. Most books that we work with in the ancient world have maybe at best a dozen manuscripts. Wherever Jesus went, whatever he did, there were always witnesses by the hundreds and thousands. Constantly, he was barely alone. And there's harmony and agreement with each witness. Here's just a few of many verses saying that there was always more than one person with him to witness what he did. These are from the Gospels. Large crowds, large crowd, crowd. Crowds gathered, crowd was present, crowd was pressing. Large crowds followed. Even when he went to be by himself in prayer, large crowds followed. They found him. They kept wanting to know more. They kept wanting to see more. This is the harmony of the Gospels. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, they were real people. In the writings of the Gospels, they were not written together. So these people didn't come together and just, write their own view of what happened. It was at separate times in separate places, and the Gospels are always proved true. Not only that, but since the beginning of the Bible, beginning of biblical times, in fact, there were always prophets and prophecies, and you would always know if a prophet was telling the truth, if the prophecy came true. There is such specific detail about Jesus' coming and what he will do, where he will be, where he will go, what will be said. I mean detailed. And these are just a few prophecies of over 300 that were given before Jesus' time, hundreds of years before. Now, where are the prophecies of Muhammad? Who prophesied about him? Did he prophesy about anything? Where are his witnesses in the cave? There are none. In fact, I'm even going to throw this in for fun. A prophecy about Alexander the Great from the Bible. From Ezekiel, I will make your island a bare rock, a place for fishermen to spread their nets. You will never be rebuilt, for I, the Lord, have spoken it, so says the Lord. This island is the island of Tyre, Tyre. This prophecy came true when Alexander the Great conquered it and destroyed it. In Daniel, when you saw the horn break off and 4 smaller horns replace it, this meant that the Grecian Empire will break into 4 sections with 4 kings, none of them as great as the first. The first king was Alexander the Great. This is talking about Alexander, and when he died, his empire broke off into 4 sections. And here it is again. The third of these strange animals looked like a leopard. This is a vision that Daniel had. But on its back it had wings like those of birds, and it had 4 heads, and great power was given to it over all mankind. This leopard is Alexander the Great. He was given great power. I didn't put it in here, but it further goes on to describe how it'll break off into 4 sections, and that again is when he dies, his kingdom, his nation, his conquerings, whatever he did, will break off into 4 sections. Moving on to Sharia law. Did you know that if you Google or Bing or whatever search engine you use, you can't find the full copy of Sharia law. You will find blogs and websites that give you little tidbits. So I found this PDF available for you in my sources section in the description box, where a non-Muslim reviews Sharia law and writes about it. I read through the Quran, and this is the same stuff that I found in the Quran, and I also bought a copy of Sharia law. I finally found one. Also available in my sources. I did it so I can compare what's being said. So under Sharia law, there is no freedom of religion, speech, thought, artistic expression, which raises the question of this model from Somalia that I started this video off with. No freedom of the press, no equality of people, non-Muslims, no equal protection under Sharia for different classes of people, no equal rights for women, women can be beaten, non-Muslim can't bear arms, no democracy, the US Constitution is man-made document, it is a document of ignorance, and that document must submit to Sharia. Non-Muslims are second-class subjects, all governments must be ruled by Sharia law. Unlike common law, Sharia is not interpretive, nor can it be changed. There is no golden rule. In Medina, Muhammad sat all day long beside his 12-year-old wife while they watched as the heads of 800 Jews were removed by the sword. Their heads were cut off because they had said that Muhammad was not the prophet of Allah. Muslims view these deaths as necessary because denying Muhammad's prophethood was and remains an offense against Islam. Someone here watching this will probably say, well, God in the Bible had nations killed, so that proves that, it's about religion and your God is not better than Allah. Which then I would say that these nations were not killed or destroyed because they said they didn't believe in God. It's because these nations were pagan nations that burned and sacrificed their children on altars to other gods. I think that would be cause enough to wipe out a nation. I'm talking heated plates after the children were born. And during the rituals, the people made enough noise to drown out the crying as the child was being burned alive. So, no, I don't think there's a comparison here. In the Quran 4:34, Allah has made men superior to women because men spend their wealth to support them. Looking down a little, it says, as for women whom you fear will rebel, admonish them first and then send them to a separate bed and then beat them. But if they are obedient after that, then do nothing further. Surely Allah is exalted and great. You will not find something like this in the Bible. All of Islam is based on the Quran, the Sirah, and the Hadith. The problem is that to learn what the proper Islamic way to do something is to be found in thousands of pages and is far too complicated to be practical use. So, the Sharia takes everything about the subject, for instance marriage, and codifies all of the information into one ordered system called the Sharia. These are 3 things I put on here that happens: apostasy from Islam, jihad, and dealing with a rebellious wife. You can read this yourself, just pause the video, but it's not very pleasant. So in order to save face, today's Islamic scholars claim that Sharia law concerning women are the rule of law in Islamic families, and Islam was the first civilization to provide and guarantee women's rights. Yet I don't see women's rights. I'm actually going to show you what's really happening in places like Saudi Arabia, and there are no women's rights there. These scholars claim that Sharia shows how women are protected in Islam, that women are treasured, that they have rights, but we are not fools here. And this from the Quran is a conversation between Muhammad and women where he tells them they are lacking in intelligence. And he says that the testimony of one man is equal to the testimony of 2 women. They also lack in their religion and they lack in some other stuff. Okay, this is what I got, this version of Sharia law. So I do have to say something about this. After reading through it and comparing it to what I just read and comparing it to the Quran, which I did get from the library. Yes, it is available at a library. This is a very modern version, and whoever wrote this literally sugar-coated so much of it. So if you read through it without paying attention, you would think, oh my goodness, this is all so nice and sunshiny and rainbows, and it seems like the perfect thing. Because the writer keeps contradicting himself or themselves. And after reading through it, there was one place I caught that the writer said that it was an interpretation that they believed, he or they. And in some places, because the Quran is supposed to hold true, they could not get out of sugarcoating something. Examples. You, the entire Muslim Ummah, are the best of the nations raised up for the benefit of men. I disagree with that. They are not the best of the nations raised up for the benefit of men. I would say the United States, Canada, Britain, France, Germany, Poland, Russia. These nations have risen pretty far and they have benefited the nations by far, among others I haven't named. And the Middle East is still living back, way back, even further than the Middle Ages. Allah does not guide the transgressing people. But you know what? The God of the Bible does. You could have done the worst things in your life. When you have a changed heart, you have a changed life, and God does not turn away people. On the subject of rebellion, the punishment of those who wage war against Allah and His Messenger and strive to make mischief, us, the infidels, in the land is only this, that they should be murdered or crucified, or their hands and their feet should be cut off on opposite sides, or will be expelled out of the land. This shall be as a disgrace for them in this world, and in the hereafter they shall have a grievous chastisement. Do not plead on behalf of those who act unfaithfully to their souls. Surely Allah does not love him who is treacherous, sinful. Well then, thank God for God Himself, who died on the cross for us sinful people, so that even though we are sinful, He still forgives us and wants us to come to Him. All of us. Because apparently Allah of Islam does not. The way of hypocrites is described as, they desire to be raised for what they do not do. Well, I say to this that through my point of view and the point of view of many Americans and Western people, Muslims who practice Islam desire to be raised for what they do not do. Coming to these countries, demanding what they want in accordance to Sharia law, which has not worked for their countries. Like the model at the beginning of this video, she is being praised for something historic and momentous. Justice depends on evidence, and for evidence, the Holy Quran has set up such a high standard, the like of which you may not find elsewhere. My rebuttal: the Bible has set up such a high standard, the likes of which you may not find elsewhere, and it actually worked. The proof is the nation of America and its success. Okay, here is one example where the writing here in this version of Sharia is contradictory, because once again, this version of Sharia is supposed to be very likable and sugar-coated and sunshine and rainbows. It says, imprisonment as punishment is nowhere mentioned in the Quran. Notice the word imprisonment. Now, if you keep reading, it says, for general immodest behavior on the part of women, not men, only women, which leads towards adultery, the punishment prescribed is, in quotation marks, confinement to houses, because that's not imprisonment at all. Looking down further, if they do not testify, confine them to houses until death do claim them, or the law of Allah creates a situation which takes them away from such shameful acts. That is imprisonment. Very, very good play on words, but I don't think this guy's fooling anyone. Definitely not me. Reading further, tell your wives, the daughters, and the believing women that they should cast a loose outer garment over their persons when going out. It is necessary for their recognition as honorable women. Notice nothing is said about men. This is also in the Quran because this is taken from the Quran. So you must wear loose outer clothing, you must wear the hijab, you must wear the burqa, you must wear something that covers you completely. So the next time someone says it's a choice, don't believe it. The economic system is based on the principle that every earning member of the society shall work according to his capacity, and all that is gained by their collective efforts shall be spent in fulfillment or in fulfilling the needs of all the individuals of the society. Sounds like socialism. Here in this part of Sharia law, it's trying to praise how equal men and women are, and it is worded so carefully to show that there are different roles and that women are taken care of, and so on and so on. Keywords here, in pre-Islamic Arabia, but you know what? In Saudi Arabia today, it is exactly the same. The birth of a girl is considered disgraceful. Boys are always wanted. Here it's trying to give a list of how men and women are equal. If guys can do one thing, so can women, and that's why I just highlighted so can women, so are women, so are women, so do women. But the only thing it compares here is only on religion, nothing else. So this person or these people made a mistake in trying to cover this one up. It doesn't say anything about work, brains, power, ambition, just religion. In this section, you can pause and read yourself. It's trying to put a little bit of blame on women for having children, and because of that, they cannot do anything, they cannot work. But you know what? Here in the US, I have seen pregnant mothers who have gone to work, nurses who work 12-hour shifts, business women pregnant full term and still up and about, making money, earning money, taking care of their families. There is just no excuse. I'm not buying this. Once again, this is trying to put the blame of the times of the Arab society, but it's actually still happening again in the Middle East, particularly Saudi Arabia. Girls are considered foolish, devoid of literacy, art, they're ignorant, so on. The Quran has laid down the age of marriage as the age of puberty, both for boys and girls, which means that it could start as early as 9. Children are not matured or developed at that age, but apparently that, in the Quran and Islam, is the age you can marry. Here it says that Muslim men can marry women from among the people of the book. That means people of the book are Jews, Christians, or anything similar. But it says that women must not. So there definitely is a double standard. Okay, here is the sentence that I caught that confirmed my suspicion that this was just a sugar-coated version of Sharia law. Because this book is very opinionated, not factual according to what the real Sharia law was and said and was written as. It says here, however, this is our deduction from the verses of the Quran. So this guy or these people went through the Quran and then they just came up with something that was similar so that it can show, look how good the Quran is. We're making up Sharia law here so that you can understand it. This is an English translation, obviously, because I'm reading it, but too much got lost in translation. Final example, nikah is a contract between a sensible and mature man and woman to lead a married life. That means marriage. Notice how it says between a sensible and mature man and woman, yet arranged marriages happen. Muhammad had a 12-year-old wife. There are guys in Saudi Arabia, in places in the Middle East, that have young, very young wives, like children, I mean. So where's the sensibility and maturity here? This is a study Quran I got. When I read through the notes in here to see what they had to say and what they had to teach, it was more opinion and interpretation, and there was definitely disagreement because at one point when I was reading, and I forgot where I should have highlighted this, the interpretation of a verse I was reading was pointed out as opinion and not everyone agreed on it. And by everyone, I mean the scholars who were trying to write this. Pause and read these verses yourselves. I can't go over them because this video is going to end up too long anyway. But this is where the real Sharia law comes from. So to show you how wrong the sugar-coated version of the Sharia law that I got is compared to the real Sharia law, this is a book called In the Land of Invisible Women. I mentioned it in another earlier video. Shows how a doctor who was supposed to go to Saudi Arabia because her visa expired was treated. She was fearful about the way she dressed because she could get in trouble. Men and women were separated. So at the airport, there were 2 different lines. Here it says when a man meets another man, he shakes hands, but a man greeting a woman without handshakes and never without the presence of her family member is the right way to greet her. Prayer is mandatory, and there's a bunch of code of conducts here. You can pause and read. The author writes, in Saudi Arabia, women veil themselves in progressive man-made demarcations of orthodoxy. The most extreme are the Wahhabi women, whose veiling was unlike anything I had ever seen before, even during childhood journeys to Afghanistan, Iran, or northern Pakistan. Years later, when I saw a blue-meshed bundle murdered at anonymous gunpoint in a forgotten Afghan hellhole, I recognized every Wahhabi woman. In Saudi Arabia, these women follow the most extreme veiling. That doesn't sound like a choice to me. Regardless of whether the face is covered or not, in Saudi Arabia, no woman can go anywhere in public without wearing an abaya that covers at least the body and her head of hair. They are almost always black year-round, irrespective of the intensity of the hot climate. So even color is restricted. Here she says, citing Sharia, the clerics ban women from driving cars, forbid women from buying music, prevent women from booking hotel rooms in their own names, and attempted, but failed, to dissuade female passengers from wearing seatbelts in the front seats of cars for fear of defining the cleavage. Earlier, Wahhabis had worked hard to prevent the telephone from being introduced in the kingdom, fearing it would be used as a satanic instrument. Okay, and the United States needs Sharia law. That's what we need. This author is a doctor who studied here in the United States. Hospitals in the Middle East are nowhere near as good as what we have here in the US. She knows her craft well, but she is not allowed to say anything to a male physician, according to this page. You can pause and read for yourself again. If she says anything, it is insulting to him and there will be repercussions. This is Sharia law broken down in bullet points for you. This is Sharia law in the United States. I searched every bullet point to make sure it was true, and it is. This is how it's been introduced and been used in the United States in Congress. Please pause and read for yourselves because it's really quite disturbing. In Denmark, Muslims are calling for areas with large Muslim populations like Copenhagen's to become Sharia law zones patrolled by Muslim religious police, modeled after Saudi Arabia to apprehend and punish all Sharia law violators. Such Muslim police already exist in Spain, where Sharia courts now threaten women for driving cars or working outside the home. In Holland, Mohammed is now the most common name for boys. Death sentences against Sharia lawbreakers have been carried out. But I don't know if that means if it includes the citizens of Holland itself or just Muslims living there. In 2013, the death sentence was issued against cartoonist Charlie Hebdo. In 2015, Muslims killed the Charlie Hebdo cartoonist and massacred 130 people in Paris. In 2016, Muslims used bombs and guns to kill 33 people in Brussels, Belgium, and trucks to kill 80 people in Nice and 12 people in Germany. This is also available on my sources page because there's a lot more. I'm just reading a few points. In 2011, UK's Muslims began demanding that Sharia law replace British common law and become the only law in towns with large Muslim populations, including Birmingham, Bradford, Derby, and quite a few more. Muslim enclave whose streets are already plastered with posters declaring you are entering a Sharia-controlled zone, Islamic rules enforced. Way to go, Britain! If Sharia law is so great, then how come these two sisters drowned themselves? With police quoting that the sisters had indicated that they would rather harm themselves than return to Saudi Arabia. Or this situation where this Saudi teen tells how she escaped her family. Here it says, if you happen to be from Saudi Arabia, where females can't travel, study, or sign legal documents without permission from a male guardian. This video, which I also have available on my sources page, says Muslim woman sues, demands court obey Sharia law. Certain people in the country of the United States, Canada, Britain, France, pretty much Western countries, tolerance is preached to the point where people like this can take advantage. I love Lauren Southern. I think she's very brave. She's in Australia and she was thrown out of a no-go zone. A no-go zone means that anyone who is not Muslim and does not follow Sharia law cannot go in there, or else it can actually mean your life. And sadly, the Australian police, citizens of Australia, are enforcing that too. I added this video on here because I wanted to show you the mind of a Muslim who is true to Sharia law.
I'm sorry, what?
Will you condemn Hamas
Would I condemn Hamas?
as a terrorist and genocidal organization?
Are you asking me to put myself on a cross?
So you won't. I actually have had this experience many times. You didn't read the pamphlet because the pamphlet is chapter and verse. The main connection is that the MSA is part of the Muslim Brotherhood Network as revealed in the documents.
I don't think you understood what I
Anyway,
meant by that.
this
I
is-
meant if I say something, I'm sure that I will be arrested for reasons of Homeland Security. So if you could please just answer my question.
If you condemn Hamas, Homeland Security will
If I
arrest you.
support Hamas, because your question forces me to condemn Hamas. If I support Hamas, I
Well,
look really
if you won't
bad.
condemn Hamas, obviously you support it. Case closed. I've had this experience, I had this experience at UC Santa Barbara where there were 50 members of the Muslim Students Association sitting right in a rows there. And throughout my hour talk, I kept asking them, will you condemn Hezbollah and Hamas? And none of them would. And then when the question period came, the president of the Muslim Students Association was the first person to ask questions. And I said, before you start, will you condemn Hezbollah? And he said, well, that question is too complicated for a yes-no answer. So I said, okay, I'll put it to you this way. I'm a Jew. The head of Hezbollah has said that he hopes that we will gather in Israel so he doesn't have to hunt us down globally. For it or against it?
For it.
Thank you. Thank you for coming and showing everybody what's here.
This is why I don't like Ilan Omar, someone who was given refuge from Somalia, no chance of ever being anything she is today, and yet she introduces this Sharia law to this country. She is in Congress. It's already in the system. Another one, Linda Sarsour. I don't care if she says that she is born in America. She is not an American citizen because America was not founded on Islam or Sharia law. Her birthplace means nothing. So what's the point? What do I want? What do people like me want? This is what I want. This is what I want back. I want my country back.
What brought me here is that I found home in America, and I would really hate it if the values that made me find America as my home would be destroyed. So I'm with the Trump campaign, I'm with the Republican campaign. Keep the people out of America that would change America for what we love it for. And Milo is just another part of that, and this is why I'm here to support him.
Yeah. And what country did you flee, and why did you flee it?
Kuwait. I was married, and my very Muslim husband told me that I didn't need to go to college because my degree didn't mean anything because it wouldn't matter. I don't think there's anything I could say for them to understand about something. If you want to learn about something, go and learn about it. You're more than welcome. You know, become a hostage in Saudi Arabia. Maybe that will teach you something. I just think the best way they could learn is to, if they want so bad to embrace that culture, to go into the culture and learn it from there, you know, instead of learning it from the comfort of their American couches and their American homes in front of their American TVs. They don't know what I experienced, and I don't think words would do it. They should just have to experience it.
Educate yourself!